All right, these are the video notes for percents and fractions part 2. Question of the day is 3/10 to the power of 3. So make sure you do that in the question of the day portion of your packet. Also be sure to write down in your planner, CYU page 124 is due Wednesday. If you're watching this and you're gone, you'll get an extension. But be aware if you were in class, this is intended to be done before you go on Thanksgiving break. That is the goal. All right. So question of the day is 3/10 squared to the power of 3. So remember, the exponent tells us how many times to write it. In the operation we do is multiplication. Remember, when we multiply decimals, we do not like to keep them there. We want to move them out of the way. For some reason, my software is glitching, so give me a second. All right. So when we multiply decimals, we want to move them out of the way, so we'll do that. And we keep track of how many spots we moved it. We moved it 3 spots in total. I'll rewrite it. We're up to 3 times 3 times 3. 3 times 3 is 9. 9 times 3 is 27. We're not quite done yet. We have to undo the decimal moving that we did at the start. So you have to move it 3 spots to the left. So you'll have 27 thousandths. And that is your answer. All right. So tomorrow's a work day in class. So if you were gone on Monday, but you plan to be here Tuesday, it's planned to be a work day that day. If you're going to be gone on Tuesday as well, just know that we spent the next day working. There is a lot of homework going on right now, so that's what we did to try to help mitigate all of that work. All right, so percents and fractions part 2 on page 122. So this is a continuation of skill number 4 that we went over on Friday. And this time it's how do we change a tricky fraction into a percentage. So the only word that is really different is tricky. It's the same skill, but what we taught you before won't work for everything. So to change a fraction to a percent, we make an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 100. That's awesome when it works, but what if the denominator does not easily scale to 100? We can remember that fractions are division problems in disguise. Fractions are division problems in disguise. So what does that mean? We can do our long division. Remember 3/8. We remember how to set it up because the number on top, oh no, it fell and it takes the bar with it, and 8's still sitting there, confused on what happened. And that's how you set up the long division. You'll do it all. I showed you it right over here. Sorry, I need to be in laser mode. Right over there. And then we get a decimal. So 0.375. You will be learning a shortcut on how to convert a decimal to a percentage. You don't know that quite yet, in theory. But all we're going to do is we're going to turn this back into a fraction. But this time the fraction is going to work a little nicer. Remember, to convert a decimal to a fraction, you just read it. So this is 375 thousandths. So we'll put 375 over 1,000. Remember that percents are out of 100. That is what percent literally translates to. And then we have to divide the top and the bottom by 10 to shift the decimal over. We'll get 37 and 5/10 over 100, meaning we have an answer of 37.5%. You will learn a shortcut in an upcoming day, but for now, you'll have to set up that fraction, make it so the denominator is 100, and then you'll get there. It is totally okay for you to have decimals inside of fractions. It happens more often than not, to be honest. There is some other ways kind of around this. Parts per million, parts per billion, those are kind of like percents. They function in a similar way when the numbers get really, really small. But there's not like a per mil or like a per 1,000, right? Like that's not a thing. We always use percent, so decimals are going to be part of your reality with them. So there's nothing wrong with it. All right, Flip to page 123. I will do the first one for all three. You'll pause the video, you'll work through them all, and then you'll come back and I will give you the answers for all of them. So level 1 is changing a percent to a fraction in its simplest form. Remember, percent is out of 100, so it's going to be 5 out of 100. We can simplify this by dividing the top and the bottom by 5, and that'll get us our final answer of 1/20. Level 2, you're going to change each fraction to a percent, so we have to scale it up. Remember, we want to have a denominator of 100. So 25 times what equals 100? It's 4. 6 times 4 is 24. So 24 out of 100 is just going to be 24%. And then last but not least, level 3, you have to do the long division. 24 goes on the outside, 6 goes on the inside. Remember, if it doesn't fit, you have to add a 0.0, and you can keep adding trailing zeros. So pause the video, try to solve the rest of them. When you come back, I'll walk you through them all. All right. So we got 45%. That's 45 out of 100. The top and the bottom are both divisible by 5. And that's going to get me 9/20. Sorry about that. For the next one, we have 52%, which is 52 out of 100. They're both even, so you can divide them by 2. If you did that, you would see you'd have to do that again. I'm going to just divide them by 4 just to do this in one clean step. And I'll get 13 over 25. And then last but not least, we have 250%, or 250 out of 100. I can divide the top and the bottom by 50. And I will get 5 halves, or 2 1/2. Both are accepted. All right. On to level 2. You just got to scale it up so you get a denominator of 100. 10 times 10 is 100. What you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top. So we'll get 70 out of 100, which is 70%. Next, we have 20 that we want to get up to 100, so we can multiply it by 5. 3 times 5 is 15. 15 out of 100 is just 15%. And then for this next one, there were 2 ways you could do it. You could scale it or turn it into an improper fraction. 5 times 5 is 25. 25 plus 2 is 27. And you keep the original denominator. Got to scale that up so we get up to 100. So multiply the top and the bottom by 20. And you'll end up with 540 over 100. So you get 540%. Another thing you could have done, you could have just realized 5 is going to be 500%. And then multiply this one by 20. And you'll get 40 over 100. So 500 plus 40% is 540%. You could have also done it that way. Both work. All right. On to the tricky ones. These are the ones that don't scale so nicely, so we have to do our long division. There is other strategies that you may think of as we do this, and I may point them out, but overall, long division is going to be the most reliable. So 24 does not fit into 6. 24 fits into 60 twice. We'll subtract 48, and we will get 12. We have to add a trailing 0. Drop it down. We get 120. 24 fits into 120 5 times. We'll subtract 120, and we get our bestest, favoritist number. So we get 0.25 or 25 hundredths. We have to write that as a fraction. So 25 hundredths is going to be 25 out of 100. It's already over 100, so we can just write it as 25%. And that's your answer. Another method you could do is you could realize this could be simplified. You divide the top and the bottom by 6, and you're going to get 1/4. 4 does scale up to 100 very nicely. Multiply the top and the bottom by 25, and you'll get 25 out of 100, which is the same thing we got when we long divided. That also works. It doesn't always work, like the 11/40ths. You're not going to be able to simplify that and scale it back up. But for 6/24ths, we could simplify it and then scale it up. There's nothing wrong with doing that. It'll work when it works, which is pretty nice. All right. So 11/40ths. 11 goes on the inside, 40 goes on the outside. 40 doesn't fit into 11. 40 fits into 110 twice. We'll subtract 80, and we'll get 30. We'll add another trailing 0. 40 fits into 300 7 times, and we'll subtract 280. We will get 20. 40 doesn't fit into 20, so we have to add a trailing 0. 40 fits into 200 5 times. We'll subtract 200, and we get our favorite number. So this time we got 275 thousandths. Hopefully you don't think it's 275%. If you do, that's a common mistake. What we're going to do is we're going to put 275 over 1,000. Remember, you read it correctly. 275 thousandths. Percents are out of 100, so we need to divide the bottom by 10 to get there. And what you do at the bottom, you have to do the top. So you'll get 27.5 over 100. Which just means our answer is 27.5%. You will be learning a trick soon, so you don't have to do that whole fraction step, but you would still have to do the long division, unfortunately. That's just part of some of these problems that aren't going to work out so nice. And hopefully that all made sense, and have a good one.